Hey everybody, you're watching We the Fandom, where we discuss comic books, pop culture, and the fandom experience. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to see more content. How's it going everybody? Jacob here at We the Fandom, and today's video is going to be about something I kind of talked about in my very first video, where I kind of explained what this channel is going to be about and why I wanted to start a YouTube channel in the first place. One of those things being how I believe there's been a weird shift in the characters and stories in Marvel and DC in the past almost decade now, and it seems to be based on certain ideologies within the comic book community and within the creators and publishers themselves. And today we're going to look at an article by The Bleeding Fool, which cites comments from an interview with Michael Golden, a veteran comic book artist, on gatekeeping within the comic book industry. So here we are. All right, so the Texarkana Gazette interviewed veteran artist Michael Golden at a store book signing, who had some most interesting points to make about past and present conduct of the big two, those being Marvel and DC Comics. Golden acknowledges the comic scene has changed a lot since he started. Technology has brought some of the greatest changes, he said. It used to be, if you wanted to be in comic books, you had to go to New York City, where the publishing offices of both Marvel and DC Comics were located at the time. They were the gatekeepers. Independent books did exist even then, but the way was much harder. Now anyone anywhere can get their start relatively inexpensively. There's a lot more players out there, but there is much more opportunity. Golden acknowledges that the big two in comics have made decisions that might not have been the best for the iconic properties they own. But part of that is times changing. As mythological figures change hands, so does the perception of them and how stories are told about them. But he also said the market does play a key factor. How about that? He acknowledges the big two, if anybody, acted as gatekeepers in the past. And in many ways, they still are. Only now, independent publishers can prove just as bad when it comes to right-wingers, for example. And the highlighted, for example, part leads to another article talking about how a lot of right-wing comic book writers and artists have seen discrimination in the past decade or so and have kind of been pushed out of Marvel and DC. Unfortunately, how the figures in focus change hands so far is not working well in terms of perception. If the story in a mainstream production is bad, nobody seeking talented creation will buy and read them. Yet Golden says, whatever you think of the product Marvel and DC are producing now, they still are places a new comics creator can learn the basics of the trade. He said, it is like going to work for McDonald's or Burger King. That may not be the most creative environment. It may not be where you ultimately want to go in that business. But as far as learning the basics of the craft and the business, it is good training. As the creative decisions being made now among the big players, the market will ultimately show the way, as the customer will always let everyone know eventually. Which we've been trying to, but the big two aren't so good at listening, or rather they're listening to the wrong people. The modern comics world is a bit of a Wild West. That's the future I see. Get out there. The opportunities are endless. And then the author of the article says, I would firmly disagree here. What if they sabotage your script or artwork over phony, petty issues pertaining to social justice warrior mentality and politics? The whole notion you have to go learn the trade styles foremost with Marvel or DC is ridiculous. While it's not like Dark Horse hasn't made mistakes in their own way, what if they could still prove just as good a place for learning the basics, or Aspen, or maybe best of all, an art school? Indeed, why doesn't anybody consider that a school dedicated to illustration could be a good, if not perfect, place to study professionals' approaches to the art forms? That's one more reason why you should be wary under the current situation of going to work at the big two, because they could make a mess of what you really like to do if you're talented, while granting favoritism to less talented artists instead. Golden's a talented artist, and I own at least a few items he'd worked on in the past. Issues of Avengers and Doctor Strange, for example. But he's another veteran who'd do well to take a closer look under a magnifying glass at what kind of embarrassments the big two have really become, right down to petty politics, and learn why. Unless there's a serious change in ownership and management, they're not good places for an aspiring creator to get a start. Besides, many creators have to begin in the independents today. Ironically enough, for the big two to even consider giving them jobs. So the kind of thing he's kind of criticizing here, I think, is Michael Golden mentioning technology makes it a lot easier for you to get into the comic book industry. But today, the comic book industry is hiring a lot of like Tumblr artists, which is good for the artists, but it's not good for fans who have gotten used to a certain quality of art. The standard has lowered immensely, and that helps the publisher as well because they get to pay these newer artists a lot less, which saves them money, which they kind of have to at this point with all the money they're draining due to not selling as many comics as they used to. And the whole gatekeeping and the political ideology affecting both the quality as well as the total atmosphere of the comic book industry, it's hurting everybody. It's hurting the publishers, it's hurting new artists and writers, and it's hurting the fans. I mean, the marketers and therefore the editors at comic or companies like Marvel and DC are listening to a very vocal minority of people on social media, people who see new comics or movies coming out that are just trendy, and so they go look up a little about it so they can go argue with incels on Twitter, and then those are the people that Marvel and DC look to as their audience when those people don't actually care. They care about the political aspect of a trendy new piece of pop culture, like a movie or a big comic book, one that's really famous, is coming out soon, and they go to that and say, hey, this better fit our political agenda or else we won't keep promoting it. And Marvel and DC look to those people who have affected the comic book industry in a way to where they're constantly, race and gender swapping characters to fit political agendas. People look at a Marvel movie and say, there's too many white characters in this movie, so we need to change one of the characters' race to make them black. Or there's too many straight characters in this movie, we need to make one of them gay, which is just dumb for so many reasons, because the characters are the characters. Race swapping them or gender swapping them to pander to somebody doesn't really do well for anyone, I don't think. I mean, is there supposed to be like a quota, a certain amount of gender, sexualities, and race, certain amount of people for each race present in a movie or a comic book? You're not helping anybody. You're swapping out historical characters in order to pander to people. You're not helping the publisher, you're not helping the fans, you're not even helping the loud people on Twitter arguing for more diversity. All you're doing for yourself is just checking off the little boxes to win diversity bingo. You're not doing good for business. You're not rewarding the fans for their all the money they've been giving you for years, possibly decades, depending on how old the fan is. So just go back to making good comics and making good movies. Politics can come second, as they should. You want to make good movies and make good money, don't worry about political ideologies. You got decades of great stories to adapt in movies. And if you want to make new comic book stories, then write good comic book stories. They don't need to pertain to any particular ideology. They just need to be entertaining. That's what people buy the comics for. That's what people go to see movies for. Just go back to doing that. But that's all I had for you guys today. If you guys are new to the We the Fandom, please hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell so you don't miss when a new video comes out. As well as if you like this video, please smash that like button, and I will see you all next time.